Hey, what's up? This is Steve Cardenas, aka Rocky the Red Power Ranger,
and Jeff Barrazzo, Trent Fernandez Mercer from Battle Thunder,
and you are watching Team Venom Media.
It's morphin' time.
Dennis Oliver, Thorburn the Third, Calista Valentine, Rory Bailey, Paul Baker.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of the Team Venom Power Rangers podcast. I'm your host, Rory Bailey, although I'm actually a co-host today with Paul and Calista, as we've got a very special guest in, Zordon. how's it going, David? It's an absolute honour to have you on here, especially, you know, that we reached out to you and you instantly got back to us, and that was amazing. So thank you very much.
Sure thing. Not a problem. Doing the best that I can, given the current circumstances of what's going on in the world. So yeah.
Okay. Well, the first thing I wanted to ask you is, I know you've done a bit of work as a writer, as well as all the things with Power Rangers and whatnot. But what can you tell us about your books and your writing work?
Well, currently I'm in the middle of writing a series of books called the Link and Bright novels. The first book, Glims, came out February of 2020, and Gaunts came out in July of this year. So the first two books are out. I'm in the process of editing book 3, and hopefully that'll be out sometime in the spring next year, and then I'll wrap everything up with book 4 after that. So that's currently what I'm working on, but yeah.
Okay. Well, Paul, if you'd like.
Hey, just to start off, it's an honor to talk to you. Obviously a big Power Ranger fan, always have been. Yes, I'm 40 years old and I'm still into it. So, you guys must have been doing something right.
I'm 60, so yeah, I get it.
No, you're not. Don't lie. Don't BS us, man. Come on now.
I'm 58. Yeah, so there you go.
Wow.
You don't look it, I can say that.
That's crazy. So I'm curious, as far as the audition process, what did you go through? Did you have a rough idea how many people were auditioning, and how many auditions did it take for you to actually get the role as Zoltar first, then Zordon?
Yeah, my audition process was quite different than for most of the other cast members, at least for the original show. I only had to go to one audition. Most of the other guys, they went through several weeks and several rounds of auditions because they had to show off their physical ability, their acting ability, and their ability to work together. So they went through 4 weeks of working with one another and being put in this team, putting that team, and so forth and so on. I myself had just recently moved to Los Angeles. I had not been there that long when a friend that I had made in undergrad, who was working at Saban Entertainment at the time in their straight to video movie department, was actually working as a production member on this kids television pilot that they were put together at the time, which was called Dino Rangers. And she called me up and said, "Hey, we're having an audition this afternoon. Can you come down?" And I said, "Well, that's what I came to Los Angeles for." So I went down there expecting it to be a cattle call. There would be 15,000 other guys. I would go in, do my 2 minutes on video, and then I would go home and never hear anything. But when I got down to the building that afternoon, it was just me and another guy. And they said, "We're casting it tonight, and are you available to shoot next week?" And of course, I said yes to both, and they gave us our little sides that we had to read, and then we went to separate corners and sort of rehearsed for a little bit. And then they took us in one at a time to the audition room, and I met the original cast. I met the director, the producers, a couple of the people from the studio, and they made me stand up on a table. And I basically did the opening speech that you hear in Day of the Dumpster. And at the end of that, Austin St. John said, well, I think we found our Zoltar. And I went home, and a couple hours later got a phone call saying that you got the part. Congratulations. That was my experience.
Wow. So it was just you and one other guy. That's crazy, man.
Well, I mean, they had saved that section of the shoot for last. They had already been filming for like 3 weeks when they got to that point. And I don't know if they had been fooling around with the idea of possibly doing like an animation for the character. If you've seen the original pilot for the show, not the one that was aired on the network, but the one that they had originally sent to the networks or whatever, the character of Zoltar is like this big green jello-y blob kind of thing. You really can't tell who it is. So I think they had from the get-go the idea that the character would be mainly a voice role, not necessarily a on-screen presence. But I guess the test audiences and the test screeners felt like the character was too. They didn't really identify with him. He wasn't appealing enough. So they went back and they cleaned up the footage, and I'm very grateful for that, because you can actually tell that it's me now, and that was history. So there you go.
That's awesome. Calista?
I'm just kind of starstruck over here at the moment. I mean, I'm in a video conference with Zordon. I mean, quite literally the head guy.
Yeah.
I mean, the voice alone, every time I hear it, I get goosebumps. It's just, you hear that voice and it's just, yeah, oh, this guy knows what's going on. So that's just, oh, I'm just a little bit flustered, sorry.
Nice collection in the background there.
Oh, thank you, yes, my Lightning collection. I unfortunately haven't got the 2-pack of Zordon and Alpha 5, and I've not been able to get that yet.
Yeah.
I think question-wise, I'd have to sort of ask, what has the fan reaction been like to you, basically just being a floating head in a tank?
Who's reacting
means so much to so many people?
Yeah. For whatever reason, I think that because I've had people tell me that Zordon scared them, that he was rather imposing to have like this big giant figurehead up there. But I think what makes Zordon unique and what makes him appealing to people is that Zordon is very unique in the fact that he cannot physically help the Rangers.
Yeah.
If you look at other superhero teams, if you look at other franchises like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Splinter will join in the battle at some point, as an example. Zordon can't do that. The only thing that Zordon can do is to encourage and inspire. And I think that spoke to a lot of people who are watching the show.
Yes.
Saying that it doesn't matter, what's happening. What matters is that there's this entity, this person who believes in me. And I think a lot of people are either missing that in their real lives or have it in their lives. But this is just another extension of having somebody who is behind them and says, "I know you can do it. I believe in you," and that's what helps them get through whatever obstacle or tough situations that they're dealing with. I've had a number of questions pop up in Q&As at different conventions and stuff, and people reveal that they came from a broken home, or they were bullied at school, or whatever, and the show was that one bright moment in their day or their week when they could find that connection and you know, get them the strength to get through whatever was going on with them. So I think that's probably the one thing that I've taken away from it is that Zordon means a lot more than just a head in a tube.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I was aiming at with the question. It was like, if you look at the reality of it, it's just a floating head in a tube and this wise, powerful voice. But beneath it, the character is just so much more than that.
Yeah,
so,
I mean,
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
Really
the producers and the writers had latched onto something, and they knew what they, you know, because the wisdom that Zordon imparts to the Rangers is always of a very positive and uplifting kind of nature. So I think that worked.
Yeah. One thing that I'd like to ask you is about the actual process that you had for that. I know from what I've read about your role, you filmed a little bit, and it was predominantly voice acting from that point onwards and such. As I mean, I'm just starting out in voice acting myself, and I just wondered what sort of advice you'd give to someone like me that's just starting out when you're like a true veteran of that sort of thing and one of the most iconic voices of my childhood, essentially. So, what sort of advice would you offer someone like myself that's just getting into it?
Well, I mean, the best advice I can give you as a fledgling voice artist is make sure you show up on time, make sure that you understand what the producers or the engineers are looking for, and trying to deliver that in a very professional and consistent manner. I mean, we all like to watch the little outtake loops of people who are screwing up in the booth or who flub their words or whatever, and we had that when we were doing the show. But what, you know, it's true in the television industry as it is in a lot of other industries, is that time is money, and that you're only locked in there for a certain amount of time, right? So you can't take all day to do your 3 or 4 lines or whatever, however long it is. Make sure you know the lines, make sure that you know what you're talking about, and to be able to adjust to any changes they want to make, stuff that might happen on the fly, like, oh, we know we sent you this in the mail, but we rewrote the line this morning. Here's the new line. You may get, like, you know, 5 seconds to read through it, and then you have to deliver it. So, I mean, you have to be prepared. And because I had gone to school for the craft, I was very prepared for that part of the industry that I had at that point no real experience in. Other than the fact that I was acting to video that was being played on a wall and had to sort of like deliver the emotion and whatever information, even though most of Zordon's dialogue was just exposition. This is what's happening. This is the name of the monster. This is what you need to do to sort of fight it. And then the congratulations at the end, you know, good job, Rangers, you know, and all that kind of stuff. But you know, just try to be as professional and as consistent as possible. And the other thing is to always maintain a good relationship with those people, because the one thing that I was never taught in school, I was taught how to get the job. That was basically the gist of my schooling, was preparing me to get the job. What they didn't teach me, and what is very important for people, is learning how to get the next job, or learning how to keep the job, or forging relationships with the people behind the scenes who get you those jobs. And so, if you know, always say please and thank you, always be kind to people, because the people you meet on your way up are also going to be the people that you meet on the way down. So if you have a good relationship with those people, then, you know, you can move on to the next thing, other than thank you very much, being shown the door, and then you're no longer in the industry anymore. So, I mean, much like what the show was telling kids, growing up, it's like, be nice, don't bully people. That's very true in the industry is make sure that you maintain those relationships and be kind to people, be nice to people, and they will be nice to you.
Thank you. That's awesome. Thank you very much. I'll hand you over to Paul.
So I've always wondered this, and obviously you're going to be the guy to answer it. Where did the iconic voice come from? How much input did you have in that voice? Was it something they wanted, or was that all you?
The voice that I used in the audition ended up being the voice that we used in the show. And the only information that I was given during the audition was that the character was a 10,000-year-old wizard who was trapped in a time warp. That was it. That was the only information I was given. And the other gentleman as well, I wish I could remember his name. I wish I could point you to where he is and what he's doing now. But when they gave us the lines to read, we sort of went to separate corners in this waiting area, and I could hear him practicing his lines while I was going through, reading the paragraph, reading what was going on in the scene, and I could hear him, and he had this really sort of mad scientist kind of take to it, where the character was a little bit more high-pitched and a little bit more, Rangers, we're going to do this kind of thing. And I thought, oh, that doesn't really strike me as what the character is on the page. So I tried to think of things that I, from my own background, my own childhood, my own, I read so much as a kid. I was a big fan of mythology and stories of King Arthur, and so I was starting to think along the lines of those type of archetypes, those type of characters, Merlin the magician, or very obviously the Wizard of Oz is a big influence as well. But the one that stuck with me the most was I wanted to sort of have this presence of like Zeus. Not the capricious, vengeful or angry Zeus from the actual mythology, but sort of like this benevolent character who sat up high and would try to encourage, Perseus or Odysseus or whoever he was talking to, finish the quest of the day or whatever. And so I decided I would go with a deeper register, and the voice that I used in the audition was basically the voice that we ended up using in the show. They just ran it through a little bit of an echo chamber and added a little bit of electronic fuzz, or they might have deepened it a little bit in with the engineering board or whatever. But for the most part, it was just me talking into the microphone. I have had a number of people tell me, why was Zordon British at the beginning and then he wasn't British later on? It really isn't a British accent. It's what they call a mid-Atlantic accent. It's something that we were taught.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, it's something that we were taught in stage work as making sure that you spoke clearly, very crisply, that all of your words could be heard, because you had to reach the back wall in the auditorium. You may be playing to 50 people, or you may be playing to 5,000 people. So everybody had to hear you. So I had just fallen back on all the years of acting training that I had. And, Zordon spoke in a very clear, clipped, and precise manner. And it can come across, to some people's ears as sort of a light British accent, but it's not British at all. Yeah. Even though my mom is English, so it might have crept in there a little bit. Who knows?
I think my next question, obviously you would definitely be the guy to ask you. What are your thoughts on kind of how, as fans have come to call it, the Zordon era came to a close, and sort of related, if you were asked to come back for a project, would you do it?
Well, I think the writers and at the end of pardon me, at the end of In Space, I think they were trying to put a bow on everything. I think at that point they were thinking that this would be the end of Power Rangers, and then everybody was going to move on to something else, which didn't turn out to be the case, because
definitely not.
Super Sentai is still going, so there's always the potential for another Ranger team or whatever. But I think they handled it really well, and the character's exit, I think, was handled with respect, and they knew that it was going to be something meaningful for the viewers to have this iconic character who represents the forces of light and goodness. If he sacrifices himself, I mean, that's a big deal. I'm of the opinion that Zordon isn't dead. It's just that the power chamber was shattered, severing his connection to this dimension.
He's out there somewhere.
Because it is science fiction fantasy, anything is possible. And since Zordon was trapped in the time warp, who knows where he is these days or what's going on with him. They just need to put together a team and go find him or something like that. As far as if I were asked to come back to do the show, I mean, if it was the official show, I would very strongly consider it. I have been asked, to join a number of fan projects, and I always respectfully decline, saying no. Make it your own. You do your own thing. That's what the joy is making that your own. And I did participate in a number of them a few years back, but at this point, I'm really concentrating on my own stuff, my own writing. But should they come to me with an offer that I can't refuse, then I'm happy to step back into the two. So
that would be awesome if you did. But I can understand your reasons for not wanting to obviously concentrate on your own thing, your writing, things like that.
It has a lot to do with the fact that I'm not that excited about appearing on camera anymore like I used to be.
Oh, yeah.
Power Rangers was a very sort of bittersweet experience for me. It was really great to be a part of the show and to be included in it. But when I found out that I was not going to be doing what I had gone out there to do, but I was going to be doing this sort of end around or however you want to talk about it, which was very great. I got to see a part of the industry that I had not experienced before. And it was very cool to see how things were done behind the scenes. But I really kind of missed out on some of the experiences that I wanted to have, like being on a set consistently, seeing my and filming some of the PSAs that the other characters did. And
I remember seeing those.
So I mean, I love the character of Zordon. I love being associated with the show and stuff like that. But I also feel like I was there for such a short amount of time that it's always surprising and humbling to hear how people are still enamored of the character and are kind of awestruck to meet, little old me, and that's wonderful. And I always try to be accommodating and very gracious to those people because it means a lot to them, and I respect that very much. But yeah, so that's what we always say.
Thank you. It's very interesting. Very good to know all of that. I mean, I completely get it. Rory, anything?
Well, touching on your answer there, did you expect the character to last as long as it did?
No. This was back in the day before the pop culture explosion. This was really before conventions took off. There was the Star Trek convention, I think, that was going on at that time, and there were car and trade shows where actors or characters from TV series might show up or whatever, but it wasn't like a regular thing. So when we were doing the show, or when I was involved in the show, I was thinking about it as any other Saturday morning cartoon or after school cartoons series, that it would run for about a year and then it would be replaced by something else. There was always a new Transformer cartoon or a new He-Man cartoon or something to entertain them the next year or whatever. What we weren't aware of at the time, but what was planned all along was, and one of the things that made the show explode right out of the gate was that the day that the show aired, the first time that it came on the television, the toys were already in the stores. And if you think about any other show at that time, you had to wait 6-8 months before you could get a toy that was associated with the show that you've been watching all this time. Yeah. But here was a show that, you know, it ran on Saturday morning at like 11 a.m. or whatever. And the kids were like, I need to have the Red Ranger. And you'd go to Toys R Us and it was there. And I think that was one of the things that took everybody, at least the people that were not involved in the business side of it, took all of them kind of by surprise that, oh, wow, this thing is bigger, much bigger than we thought. And, but again, at the time, we weren't thinking long term. We weren't thinking 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road, that this thing would still be on the air and still be, you know, we have there's a big giant Red Ranger Thanksgiving Day float parade that happens every year. There's every convention you go to, I don't care where you are in the world, there are going to be Star Wars characters, there are going to be Star Trek characters, and there are going to be Power Rangers characters. It's that prevalent.
I've even seen people in Ranger costumes at heavy metal festivals like Download. So yeah, it literally shows up everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, you know, there were so many elements that came together that they really captured lightning in the bottle. One was the costumes were very iconic. The primary colors just grabbed everybody. You know, Ron Wasserman's amazing music, that theme song is an earworm that nobody can get rid of. And, you know, it was just electric. It was exciting. It was goofy and cheesy. And, you know, everybody, you know, from, you know, the age of 4 to the age of like 10 or whatever, as soon as the show went off, they were out in the yard practicing. They were doing the kicks. They were doing the kayas. And it inspired a whole generation of people to either practice martial arts or to become a martial artist. Or I've had so many people tell me stories about, you know, I went into the military because of the Power Rangers. I wanted to do good. I wanted to protect, or I became an EMT because I wanted to help people. And so that to me is the legacy of the show. It's not just these goofy kids in costumes fighting big rubber giant monsters. It's the inspiration and the you know, inspiring people to do good. That's what it's all about.
Definitely.
Thank you. Just for the sake of that answer, I was one of those kids that instantly had to go and get the Red Ranger from Toys R Us following the show coming out, and I also took up karate within a couple of weeks of seeing it too. So yeah, spot on there. I can distinctly remember going there, and some of my classmates were there, and they're all, oh yeah, we want to be like the Power Rangers. Like, yes.
Very cool.
But yeah. So Paul.
So unfortunately, I couldn't do the whole Toys R Us thing. You know, growing up poor, the whole spiel. I'll tell you how poor we were. I didn't know what colors the Rangers were until they got to the Green with Evil series, because I was watching on a black and white TV. So I had no clue who was what color, nothing.
Wow.
But I wanted to kind of move past that. You're an you know, accomplished author right now. What got you into writing, and where can everybody get your books?
Sure. I grew up reading comic books and books of mythology, Edgar Rice Burroughs, and basically anything that I could get my hands on that was action oriented or adventure oriented. That was what was inspiring to me as a kid. And from a very early age, I was trying to mimic what I was reading. I would take comic books and I would try to make my own comic books. Or as I got older and I went through my my D&D and fantasy phase, where I would try to tell stories and create scenarios for tabletop role-playing games, those kind of things. So I was always dabbling with the idea of writing. I was always jotting notes, and unlike a lot of my classmates that I went to school with, whenever it came time to write a term paper about this subject matter, or you know, write a 6-page paper about Hamlet, I was all about that. I was like, yeah, let's do that. And I always had friends, you know, asking me for help about how to do this. So I was very interested in how to put words together to tell stories and stuff. And around 2009 or so, I started to say, well, you know what? I've been fooling around with this stuff for some time. How about if we try to see if we can't do something with it? So instead of just jotting down notes for stories, I said, okay, well, let's try to finish one. And this was about the time that Facebook came along, and on Facebook there were a number of writers groups. There were a horror writers group, there was a fantasy writers group, there was a steampunk writers group, and they were always, you know, pointing out this magazine is looking for stories, or this publication is looking for stories in this kind of categorization. So I took it upon myself to sort of like, well, let me see if I can't write a steampunk story, or let me see if I can't write a superhero story or a horror story. And I started submitting them like most people do. And again, it's like auditioning for a television show or a movie. You do your best and you put it out there and you hope you get the call back. And luckily, I got a couple of yeses and a whole lot of no's. And I just kept working at it. And around 2013, I said, okay, well, I've been doing this for a while. Let's see if I can't write a full-on book. And there's a wonderful program out there called National Novel Writing Month. It happens every November. NaNoWriMo is the shortened version of it. And basically what it is it's a challenge for anybody who's a writer to see if they can write 50,000 words in a month. And 50,000 words is the cutoff point for what a short novel is. So they're challenging you to write a novel in a month. And so I took a couple of stabs at that. And first couple of times, you know, I didn't quite make the 50,000 word cutoff, because November is a very busy month. And if you've got a full-time job and you can only write, you know, 3 or 4 hours a day, and you don't make your word count every day, you're not going to make that 50,000 words. But what it did is it got my creative brain, you know, thinking about different ideas for different stories. And what led me to the Lincoln Bright series was that, as any creative will tell you, you know, if you're trying to write a movie script, or if you're trying to write a television show, it's not always that you have a great story. You have to have a good hook. You have to have something that people can recognize and identify with and go, ooh, I want to know more about that. So that was my challenge when I was coming up with the Lincoln Bright stories, because I wanted to do because of the direction of the way things were going in the world, things seem to be getting a lot darker. And, you know, they're still sort of seeming to get a lot darker these days. So I turned away from superhero stories that have a happy ending, or fantasy stories that happen on a world far, far away with, you know, chivalry and all that kind of stuff. And I sort of said, well, what if I take all of my anxiety and all of my all of my concerns about what's happening, and channel that into something that's going to help me get through it. And so I settled on this idea of what is it that happens to people, once they perish. And so the whole premise of the Lincoln Bright series is that there are these entities called glims. Glims are created whenever somebody dies. Now, most of these glims, they only last for a few seconds or a few minutes, and it's whatever leftover negativity or leftover unresolved issue that somebody might have. It sticks for a minute or two, and then eventually it just understands that it's over, it's done with, and it dissipates, it goes away. However, there are those that either because of extreme deep sorrow or unrelenting anger or horrible trauma, those entities stick. Those are the glims that stick. And those glims start to pick away at the fabric of the world, and they're trying to eat their way through to another dimension. And there are these things on the other side that Lincoln calls the dead, these other dimensional beings that are trying to get through so they can feed on the living here. So that's what the whole premise of the Lincoln Bright series is about. And
very interesting. I'll keep an eye out for that.
yeah, it's being published by Caffeine Inc. You can, if you search my name on Amazon.com, you can find my author page. And
awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll definitely take a look at that.
Okay, perfect. Sorry if I rambled there.
It's okay. I think we're down to about a minute left on time, Rory.
Okay. We'll wrap this up then because of time constraints and everything. It's been absolutely awesome chatting to you, David. Can't thank you enough for joining us. This has truly been an awesome experience. Obviously, you're more than welcome to join us whenever you feel like it. So whenever you've got anything you'd like to talk about in terms of like your new books, just give us a shout and we'll happily have you back on again.
Will do. Thanks for having me on. And may the power
lovely having you, and I've now spoken to one of my idols. So thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been an honor.
Thank you.
Okay.
You guys have a great one.
Thank you.
Everyone,
See you.
Take care.